Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back. My name is Dee and this is Dee's Reading Lounge, where I'm sharing my love for reading at my own pace. Welcome if you are new, and thank you so much for coming back if you have been here before. So first, before I get into this book haul, I want to say thank you to all of those who have subscribed, who watch my videos. I finally made it to 100 subscribers. It may sound like a low number, but you guys don't know how hard that was to reach 100 subscribers. So I do thank you. It doesn't go unnoticed. I really do appreciate you just clicking on the video and watching, and I always look forward to your comments. So if you have been watching my channel, you guys know that I went on a halt, a complete book buying ban for 3 months. Definitely needed. I was, trying to do some other things with my money. This book haul is going to consist of a lot of nonfiction. Nonfiction was my first love, still is, and then I veered into fiction, and I have just been enamored with fiction lately, and so I haven't been giving my nonfiction any love, but there has been some gems coming out in the last couple of months as far as nonfiction. I did have more books on my wish list, so the 3 months that I was not buying books, I would add a book that I thought I was interested in, and then July 1st I added all the books that I was interested in, deleted a lot of books. So this is very much an intentional book haul. And so these are the books that I really wanted on my shelf. And so let me stop blabbering, because I can blab, and get right into this haul. First book I want to show you is a nonfiction, and it is When Crack Was King by Donovan X. Ramsey. It says A People's History of a Misunderstood Era. So I was a teenager back in the 90s, and I do remember, crack being an epidemic. So this is pretty much the crack epidemic as it was reported on the media. And it just goes over people's stories regarding their experience with crack and how it was back then in the 90s. I know, people who used crack back then, they were looked at as criminals, criminalized, deemed as just simple and plain drug addicts. So if we compare that to what's going on with the opioid epidemic, the people going through that are not really looked at as, simple drug addicts or criminals. They're more looked at as people who are addicted, because addiction is a disease of the brain. Once you're addicted, who need help, treatment. And so that is the difference. And this is a narrative, a nonfiction narrative of people's lives and their experiences with it. And when I scroll through it, it does have like people's names. Sean is one name that I see. So I guess I am going to be Lenny, just reading people's experience regarding the crack epidemic. And I can't wait, because it sounds like a really good book. So hopefully that book is set up like this book, The Warmth of Other Suns. This is by Isabel Wilkerson, which I have started. I'm making my way through it. It's going to take me some time because I'm taking my time with it. But this is also a nonfiction in narrative form too. And I think that is the best way to digest nonfiction. All right, so the next book I want to share is going to be Becoming by Daniel Black. Daniel Black, I deemed him as my newest favorite author, new to me author. He's been writing for several years, and I just discovered him when I came back on this journey. My first book by him was Perfect Peace, and that had been on my TBR for about 6-7 years. He wrote that back in, I want to say 2011, 13, something like that. And so I finally read that this year, and it was a 5-star. This was a recent read, Becoming by him. I read that on ebook because I got it for like less than $5. And so that was also a 5-star book as well. So I had to have this in physical form because I do want to read this periodically, keep it on my shelf, because it was so good. It's about the middle passage. I talked more about this in a previous video, so I'm not going to go on and on about this book. It was, just know that it was excellent writing. Both books that I've read from him, like I said, have been 5 stars, and the way he writes really resonates or ignites something in my soul. And yeah, I just absolutely love Daniel Black's writing. All right, so the next book I'm going to show, and by the way, most of these books came from Amazon. Now, you know how I feel about Amazon. However, Amazon is the only place besides thrift books, which I do shop at thrift books and thrift stores, where I can get good price books. If I could find a place that, where I could get books for a reasonable price, I would shop there. But unfortunately, if I want a book and I don't want to pay an arm and leg for it, because I'm not a regular price girl, okay? I'm not gonna a Barnes and Noble girl. I just refuse. I have, but I refuse to sit there and spend lots and lots of money on a book, especially a book that I don't know if I'm even gonna like. So I prefer to get my books used or on Amazon. So it is what it is. So I got this from the thrift store, this next book, and this is Toni Morrison's Sula. Now, I do have this in a binding. It's a 3-book binding. I've got Sula, Song of Solomon, and The Bluest Eye. However, that book is really thick because it is a 3-book binding. And for some reason, I am just drawn to read this. I've heard a lot of people talk about how good this book is. This book has a reasonable page count, less than 200 pages. So I feel like I can get through this. Now, if you know anything about Toni Morrison, or if you have ever tried to read her, you really have to dedicate time, be serious about digesting her work, because Toni demands it. She demands your time. She demands your mind too, because you have to think when you read her books. I have stopped and started and stopped her books several times, and at this point, I just need to shit or get off the pot, like I like to say. And so, Miss Toni, I hope I can go through with your book, because I really want to read this. This is her picture on the back. And so, yeah, we're gonna try to go ahead and read this one next, because for some reason I'm drawn or pulled to read this book next. Got this from the thrift store for $1.50. Can't beat that. And the reason why I decided to get this book, even though I have the book in the binding, I want to be able to carry this around. And because it's a thrift book, someone has already showed it love. It's worn. I love when the pages look a little tinged. Yeah. So I decided to go ahead and get that, because I can take that to the coffee store, traveling, which I will be traveling in about 2 weeks. All right, so the next book is another nonfiction. I'm super excited about this because I think it's going to be excellent. Haven't heard a whole lot of people on here talk about this book, but it is Black AF, The Unwhitewashed Story of America by Michael Harriot. And so this book has blurbs by a few people that I know, which is Ibram Kendi, Joy Reid, Pharrell Williams, and Amber Ruffin. Now, I know the first 3, but I don't know who Amber Ruffin is. So let me just read the inside jacket. It says, America's backstory is a whitewash mythology implanted in our collective memory. It is a sugar-coated legend based on an almost true story. It could even be said that the devaluation and erasure of the Black experience is as American as apple pie. And so that's all I'm going to read. I thought I was going to describe this book just by my own interpretation of like the title as a retelling. And it does say that it is a retelling of American history as we were told or taught as we know it, minus or with the erasure of Black people. Black people have contributed so much to America, but unfortunately that history is not told in schools. I know I wasn't taught that in schools, and so I am so excited to read this book. The book is beautiful, and I had mentioned before, I like fiction novels to be in paperback, but I do prefer like my nonfiction history books and things like that to be in hardback, because I like to keep them on my shelf for years. And because they're mostly like reference book, I can always pick it up and it's going to stand the hands of time. Now this cover is absolutely gorgeous. If you look closely at the top, there are historical figures with their faces marked out and described as petty, thief, mediocre, liar. I think that is absolutely hilarious. And so, yeah, I can't wait to read this. When I'm going to read it, I just really need to sit down and focus on my nonfiction, because I have been, like I said, not in a nonfiction mood lately, and I need to get back to that. All right, so the next book is going to be Daniel Black, Don't Cry for Me. And so, of course, I do want to read this one. I will be reading this very soon. You know, surprisingly, I read pretty much his books, the two that I read, like almost back to back. That's how good his books are. However, I do not want to get to the end of his catalog because I have a lot of his books. A lot of them I have on Kindle too. So I'll eventually read this, but I think I want to, I said I was going to read another book, which is on my Kindle. I am going to do a separate video of the Kindle books that I bought, because when I was on the book buying ban, I did allow myself to buy Kindle books less than $5. And so I did get several of his books that were less than $5, and I'll share that with you as well. But anyway, so I wanted to read this. This one has gotten lots of praises. So this one about a man who's on his deathbed. He is writing a letter to his son, who is gay. I think they are estranged, haven't spoken in years. That's what I'm assuming. And he's pretty much explaining his childhood, his how he was brought up, and what he was brought up to believe about being gay, and the reason why I guess he could never accept his son. So he's on his deathbed, maybe asking for forgiveness. And so the follow-up to this book is Isaac's Song. I'm going to hold off on getting that one because that one is only in hardback, and I don't like hardbacks for like fictional novels. I prefer to have a paperback. So I know this one is going to be good because 2 books that I have read have been 5 stars. And like I said, I have not heard any bad thing from anybody, at least that I watched, about this book. They have all rated this 5 stars. And so that is Don't Cry for Me by Daniel Black. All right, so the next book, another nonfiction. And this one is They Were Her Property, White Women as Slave Owners in the American South by Stephanie E. Jones Rogers. So I saw this one a couple months ago on Chocolate Cover Pages video that she did a couple months ago. It's about the history of white women as slave owners. Now, I love historical fiction. It is one of my favorite genres. And if you have read any historical fiction as well, we have read narratives about white women and what they have done to their slaves when the master or their husband dies. We saw that in Yellow Wife, what happened to Phoebe. And then also I read, it was a nonfiction, but there is a historical fiction of Ona Judge, where Martha Washington, when George Washington died, Martha Washington, I want to say she sold off some slaves too, something like that, and a few other books where that was what happened in the book. So I'm really eager to read this one and, you know, to see what else I will learn about, you know, that particular topic. This is going to introduce me to another aspect of white women and the role that they played in slave ownership. Can't wait to read that one. All right, so the next book is Fast by Millie Belizaire. So let me read the back. It says fast, adjective, 1, a girl or guy who is quick to engage in sexual activities, oftentimes used to shame, oftentimes used to blame victims for their own abuse. After the ultimate death of her, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. After the untimely death of her mother, Caprice Lattimore has to move in with her grandmother. At 8 years old, life as she knows it is turned upside down. The trauma of losing her mother is made worse with the introduction of Marcel, her grandmother's adult son who still lives in the home. So I'm going to stop at that part, because when I bought this, I really did not know what it was about. I just knew that I've heard good things about this book. It got good ratings, pretty much a 5-star, but I didn't really know what it was about. Either I forgot or, yeah, I just didn't want to hear what it was about, because, you know, I'm like that when people are talking about books that sound like I might be interested. Sometimes I skip over that section just because I don't want to spoil or hear too much about the book. But so just reading that paragraph, that last paragraph, I know this is going to involve abuse of a, unfortunately, a child. You know, So this one will be read, but I'm not exactly sure if I want to read that one right now. I'm in my summer mood, okay? My romance era, my light era, okay? I still want some conflict and substance in my summer reads, but I don't think I want to read anything this heavy. I might just hold on to this to the fall time. Yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. It's a gray book, gray, the color of fall. So I think so. All right, so the next book I want to share is, let's see. Is this book, and this one is by Victoria Christopher Murray, The Deal, The Dance, and the Devil. I just happened to come across this book when I was on Amazon browsing, and I thought it was interesting. So let me read the back of it for you. So it says Adam and Evia Langston have lived in their own little Garden of Eden since the two married at the age of 17. Working their way from the humblest of beginnings, the Langstons have thrived beyond anything they could have imagined. Now they live in the finest home, drive the best cars, and indulge in all the trimmings that signify their massive success. But then the recession hits and rips apart the family's financial stability. Unable to support their 3 children and other relatives, Adam and Evia find themselves drowning in financial trouble and teetering on the brink of complete disaster. With nowhere to turn, the Langstons have no idea what to do until Shay Shante, Evia's millionaire boss, comes to the Langstons with a $5 million offer that seems so hard to refuse. With the Langstons, will the Langstons make this deal, or will they recognize that the glitter of $5 million may be far from gold? So when I read that, it's several plot scenarios I can think of. Either one, the wife or the husband is going to be propositioned for a sexual encounter, or maybe it's going to involve drugs, transporting drugs, or something illegal. It sounds like a movie that I watched that came out in the 90s with, I don't remember who was in that movie, but it was a married couple, and I think the husband or the associate of the husband propositioned the husband for him to sleep with his wife for like $1 million or something like that. So that's what this is giving me, those type of vibes, and that sounds really interesting, and I cannot wait to read this. So this book is an older book. It was written in 2011, I believe, and Victoria Murphy, or Murray, did I say Murphy? I meant Murray if I said Murphy earlier. She wrote The Personal Librarian, which I still have yet to read, which I need to read. I need to get on it, y'all. I really do need to get on it, but this one sounds really good, and I think this is going to be somewhat of a drama, contemporary fiction with a little romantic suspense, maybe. So yeah, this one sounds really good, and I cannot wait to read that one because yeah, it sounds really good. So next I have I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. He actually had a show on Netflix where he followed normal people like you and I, you know, just regular people. I'm not a millionaire, I'm not a billionaire, I'm definitely not a trillionaire. I'm a nurse who makes a nominal, reasonable salary, and those are the people he was following to, you know, help them kind of manage their finances, set up their finances where they could, you know, achieve their financial goals, whatever they were, and maybe dissected some things that he thought could be improved in their finances as far as their expenses and things like that. So I tried to check this out at the library, and I tried to get this on Libby by audio, but a book like this, I thought about it, I could never get it because it's in such high demand. So I thought, you know what, I collect financial books, especially books I think I can learn something from, and I wanted to have this physically anyway. I think that makes more sense for me to have this, you know, own this so I can go back and reference. So this is pretty much a 6-week program. Now it does have 6 weekly steps, or each week you're doing something or learning a different concept. I think this is a good place to start if you are not financial literate. I became financial literate years ago. I was not managing my money well at all. This was several years ago, but now I have a different outlook about my finances and things like that. Now, so let me just read the steps to you, okay? So in week 1, it says optimize your credit cards, learn exactly what to say to get overdraft fees waived and rack up rewards. I think this is a perfect book if you like have a young person like in college, to give to them so they will be financially literate, because unfortunately me coming up, my parents didn't teach me how to manage finances, probably because no one taught them, so they were just living for the day versus living like for the future. In week 2, set up no fee, high interest bank accounts. In week 3, open up a Roth IRA and a 401k. In week 4, learn how to save hundreds of dollars a month and still have enough to buy what you love. In week 5, it says automate your accounts so they work together. Definitely interested in seeing what he says about this. I do have a few accounts that are automated, but I'm kind of old school when it comes to that, so I'm eager to learn what he's got to say about that. In week 6, see how investing is the single most important way to get rich and create your own portfolio of your own. I will teach you to be rich. Okay, so I've got two other books to show you. Now this next book is a book I already had on my, or I do have it already. I do already have this book, The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton. I bought this book when it first came out, like 8 probably years ago. 7 years ago, y'all. And I just read it last year. Shame on me. But I ended up giving my heart back to my brother, and he tore it up. And so I did buy this paperback from Thrift Books. I wanted a fresh, clean copy to put on my bookshelf. When I need hope and inspiration, I can come to this, because this man is the epitome of hope and inspiration. I talked about this book, last year when I did a review. So I just wanted to have the physical book, and so I got it for a really good price. All right, so the last book I purchased. Now this book I'm going to show you, I have seen this book, and I'm sure you have walked by this book in Barnes & Noble too. Now I just said I don't go to Barnes & Nobles very much, but when I do go in there, I rarely buy anything. I'm just looking, maybe I go to the coffee shop, but this book is always on display. It is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So I have seen this several times and always walk past it. You cannot miss this book, because this is a gorgeous black man on the cover in his looking good in his uniform, okay? And I love a man in a uniform. So always was interested in this book, and I did briefly read the back, skim the back or whatever, but for some reason I never picked this up. Probably because I don't know this man, and sometimes the person doesn't have to be a celebrity for you to read their story. I feel like everybody has a story. I have a story, okay? You have a story probably. But the reason why I bought this book, and I paid nearly full price for this book, $28, because I'm on a personal journey right now, and I was talking to my personal trainer about something that I'm thinking about doing, and he actually brought this book up, asked me if I had read this book, and I told him no. And he said, you know what, you gotta read this book, because he does something similar as what I'm talking about in this book. And pretty much what he is sharing is his life story, how he mastered his mind. Because if you want anything in life, it first starts in your head. No matter how tough it is, how hard it is, you have to believe it in your mind, because if you don't believe it, then of course you're not going to do it. It starts up here. And so if you look at this book, I didn't realize until a couple days after I got this book, I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, that is him. If you look at this book from afar, all you see is him, right? But if I bring it closer, do you see this shadow of a figure of a man back here? That is him at 400 pounds. So he went from that to this, and he became a Naval SEAL. Let me read it to you. It's so inspirational. And I cannot wait to the part where my personal trainer was talking about that he did something similar to what I'm doing, because it's definitely a mind thing. And I think I'm gonna do it, y'all. I think I'm gonna do it. So it says, poverty, prejudice, and physical abuse colored his days and haunted his nights. But through self-discipline, mental toughness, and hard work, Goggins transformed himself from a depressed, overweight young man with no future into a U.S. Armed Forces icon and one of the world's top endurance athletes, the only man in history to complete elite training as a Naval SEAL, Army Ranger, and Air Force Tactical Air Controller. He went on to set records in numerous endurance events, inspiring Outside Magazine to name him the fittest real man in America. If that's not inspirational, I don't know what is. And so I'm glad he brought this book up, because it was a book that I was have always been curious about, but just never picked up, just because probably I didn't know who he was or whatever. But he definitely has a story, and I can't wait to read this. I'll be reading this as I go through this personal journey that I'm on, because I'm going to definitely need it to be able to conquer my mind. And so, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Yes. All right, y'all. So that is it. Those are the books, my intentional book haul, that all the books that I wanted to purchase or own. Let me know if you've read any of these books. I am going to do a giveaway shortly. So stay tuned on my channel for reaching 100 subscribers. I really am appreciative of everybody who watches and comments, likes my videos, comment in the comment section. Even if you don't comment, even if you watch my video. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Y'all, this video is 37 minutes. Oh my God. I didn't think I had that many books, but I guess I'm just yapping away. All right, see you in the next video.